was killed.
She says Sanders was very active in JROTC and had wanted to be a soldier as long as she knew her.
She was already a soldier when she was in high school. Just very loving, very caring, always smiling, always trying to lift people up.
Georgia state leaders also paid tribute to the three. Governor Brian Kemp posted on social media saying, quote, "The entire Kemp family asks that Georgians everywhere join us in keeping the loved ones of those lost in this attack in our thoughts and prayers." The Army Reserve says Sergeant Rivers received several awards for his service, including the Army Achievement Medal, National Defense Service Medal, and the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. Live in the studio, Eric Mock, Fox 5 News.
Eric, thank you so much. We certainly appreciate their ultimate sacrifice. Tonight, the U.S. vows to retaliate after that attack. They blame an Iranian-backed militia for the strike. Right now, President Biden is discussing possible next steps with his national security team, but he does not want to start a war with Iran. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who met with NATO's Secretary General, says he and the president will take all necessary actions to defend and our people across Georgia are paying their respects to these fallen three soldiers. Representative Austin Scott among them, saying in part, "My wife Vivian and I extend our condolences to their families whose loss cannot be measured with words. And we are praying for a swift recovery for the dozens of additional service members who were injured in the attack."
A British-linked oil tanker on Friday went up in flames after an attack from the Iran-backed rebels. It comes after the US and UK launched a second round of joint strikes against the Houthis last week. The killing of 3 US troops and wounding of dozens more on Sunday by Iran-backed militants is piling political pressure on US President Joe Biden. Biden's response could involve a blow directly against Iran, but it's a move he's been reluctant to do, as it could ignite a broader war.
3 U.S. service members were killed and dozens more wounded after a drone attack on U.S. forces stationed in Jordan. A person familiar with the matter identified the base as Tower 22 in northeastern Jordan, an outpost near the border, and this taken before the attack. U.S. Central Command said at least 34 were injured, with that number expected to change as more seek care. It's the first deadly strike against U.S. forces since the Israel war erupted in October and sent shockwaves throughout the Middle East. Jordan, which holds extensive exercises with U.S. troops throughout the year, condemned the attack in a statement. At a campaign stop in South Carolina on Sunday, U.S. President Joe Biden asked for a moment of silence for the fallen soldiers and vowed to respond. In a statement, the White House blamed Iran-backed groups for the attack. The Islamic Resistance in Iraq, an umbrella organization of hardline Iran-backed militant groups, claimed attacks on 3 bases, including one on the Jordan-Syria border. U.S. forces have come under attack more than 150 times by Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria since October. While the United States has maintained that Washington is not at war in the region, it has been retaliating against the Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria and carrying out strikes against Yemen's Houthi military capabilities.
Are asking them to agree to an audit to be carried out by independent experts that would be selected by the Commission.
The EU is one of the biggest donors of UNRWA, but the Union was not scheduled to provide more funding to the agency before the end of February.
The EU said their audit will be broader than the UNRWA's own audit. They said it would focus in particular on how UNRWA controls its activities and in order to ensure that its staff are not involved in terrorist activities.
The EU also said that all UNRWA staff should be reviewed to make sure that they did not participate in the attacks.
At least 6 countries said they will continue to fund UNRWA, among them Ireland, Luxembourg, and Spain, which are EU member states.
And here to discuss these allegations, we're joined by Middle East Affairs analyst with the Center for Security Policy, David Wurmser. David, welcome. How do you assess the potential impact of these allegations against UNRWA on the U.S.'s relationship with the UN and on international trust in the agency?
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Well, I think this is potentially a death knell for the organization. The United States I don't think can re-enter funding for UNRWA anytime soon. Congress would step in if the administration even decided to resume. But I think this is the tip of the iceberg. I think you're going to start seeing more and more allegations come out. The Israelis are already suggesting they have information that 1,200 staffers were involved in terrorist activities of some sort. And that is beyond all the activity that we saw with Hamas allowing their schools to become arsenals and launch sites, namely the passive turn your eye the other way type support for Hamas that UNRWA did over all these years, including using UNRWA ambulances for logistics supply of terrorists and movement of terrorists. So I think this is going to get worse, not better for UNRWA.
Right, so you're pointing to a kind of allegations as well of complicity by UNRWA with these activities. So do you think there's anything that can be done to right this situation for that particular agency?
No, for that particular agency, I doubt it. There's also serious philosophical issues that will come up. For example, there's a global UN agency for refugees that deals with every other refugee elsewhere in the world. And then the Palestinians have their own agency, unique. There's no other nation or group of refugees that has it. And Hamas or the Palestinians through this agency are getting about half as much as the entire world of refugees gets, even though there are very few refugees, and the world has tens of millions. Moreover, what they define as refugee are really inhabitants. It's any Palestinian essentially is defined almost as a refugee. If you use the UN Refugee Agency's definition of refugee, before the war, there were probably no more than 30 to 40,000 refugees. So there are serious issues about the very existence of this organization beyond its participation in Hamas.
And do you think this situation is bringing these issues adequately to the surface in such that the international community will start reassessing the UN's agencies in total?
I think they'll have to. I think the behavior of the UN overall, whether it's the failure to condemn in a timely fashion the rape of women on October 7th and the atrocities, as well as the behavior of its agencies cooperating and facilitating, if not even outright participating in Hamas activities. By the way, we'll see the same with the World Health Organization. There's going to be stuff there too, in the hospitals, and the use of WHO staff and hospitals for this too. So I think this is a real watershed moment in terms of these international organizations, at least in terms of American politics, potentially European politics. And these organizations really cannot function well without American funding, let alone European.
And you mentioned a lot of the resources that are going into Palestine through the UN. How do you think, into Gaza through the UN? How do you think that it could, these pauses on funding could impact that region?
Well, certainly the Palestinians will have a much more difficult time. I suspect there will be alternative structures that will be set up by Israel, the Saudis, and others.
Manually. Coming up, a new development project in Fulton County just got a $10 million tax break, but it won't create a single job. I didn't get the tax break to begin with.
Financing is available now.
Allow the project to retain 24 existing positions over the period of a decade at $420,000 per job.
When investment happens there, it will increase in value. All tax dollars off of the real estate will go into the Beltline TAD.
Former city councilman and Congressman Kwanzaa Hall sits on the development board and championed the tax cut. He disputes that the county's assistance to the billionaire amounts to support of his controversial positions.
It's definitely not an endorsement of hate speech or anything of that type.
And Hall chalked a lot of the criticism over all of this down to political football, but the tension between the county and the city over this isn't new. In 2020, the city council passed a resolution asking the county authority to stop granting tax breaks in city limits, but evidently it has not. Now, Councilmember Westmoreland is calling on either the county commissioners or the state General Assembly to step in. Requests for comment from X were not immediately returned. In Atlanta, Rob DiRienzo, Fox 5 News.
Economic opportunity, and then a cultivate education force, which is so critical for the continued success of our state, and also increasing the safety of our communities.
The senators say their legislative priorities aim to keep Georgia on track to be the best state to live, work, and raise a family. Ahead in our next half hour, Gwinnett County could soon have a new.
We don't want them to get addicted. We still don't understand the full long-term health impacts of vaping. So it's right that we take strong action to stamp this out. That's what we're doing. Banning disposable vapes, taking powers to go after the flavors, the appearance, the packaging, where vapes are displayed in stores, but also improving enforcement, making it easier to levy on-the-spot fines at retailers who shouldn't be selling kids.
Government's disposable vapes have been a key driver behind the alarming rise in youth vaping. Now, 69% of vapers aged 11 to 17 use disposable. This was less than 2020. Scotland is to and Wales in banning single-use vapes. But that he had not heard a plausible alternative. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he was concerned about tensions in the Middle East and urged Iran to de-escalate. It comes after an attack that killed 3 US service members in northeastern Jordan near Syria's border.
Yes, we are concerned and would urge Iran to continue to de-escalate tensions in the region. We absolutely condemn what has happened over the past couple of days. My thoughts are with all of those impacted, those who've lost their lives, their families, and those that are injured. We stand resolutely with our allies to bring stability and peace to the region, and that's what we'll continue to work towards.